Imagine trying to grow food on the driest continent on Earth with no tractors, no electricity, and no modern tools. Now imagine doing it 200 years ago in a land you've never seen before. So, how did Australia's first farmers survive, let alone build a nation?
When the first British settlers arrived in Australia in 1788, they weren't farmers. They were prisoners, soldiers, and city dwellers from Europe who had never planted a crop in their lives. And suddenly, they were expected to grow food. In a harsh, unfamiliar land, with strange seasons, unpredictable weather, and soil that didn't behave like anything back home. There were no modern farming machines, no tractors, no irrigation systems, no electric pumps, just hand tools, human strength, and a desperate need to survive. This is the story of how Australia's first farms worked, without modern tools and against all odds. Australia wasn't like Europe. In England, rain fell regularly. The soil was fertile. Farming had been practiced for centuries. But Australia? The soil was sandy, dry, and often lacked nutrients. Rainfall was unpredictable, sometimes none for months. And when it did rain, it poured, flooding everything. The first settlers expected to grow wheat just like they did in Europe. But their crops failed. Seeds didn't sprout. Plants withered in the heat. Entire harvests were lost. Many early farms collapsed within the first year. Food shortages became so severe that starvation was a real threat. People were forced to ration bread, sometimes surviving on less than a single slice per day.
Without machines, everything had to be done manually. Forests had to be cleared tree by tree, using nothing but axes, saws, and muscle. Farmers chopped down massive eucalyptus trees. Some of these trees were over 100 feet tall. There were no chainsaws, no bulldozers, just the sound of metal hitting wood. For hours, sometimes days, just to clear a small patch of land. Once the land was cleared, it had to be plowed. But there were no tractors. So what did they use? Animals. Oxen and horses were tied to wooden plows, slowly dragging them through the hard soil. Sometimes the ground was so dry, the plow wouldn't even go in. Farmers had to wet the soil manually before trying again. It was exhausting, slow, and incredibly inefficient. Water was the biggest challenge. Not too much, but too little. Australia's early farmers quickly realized that rainfall alone wouldn't be enough. So they built basic irrigation systems using hand dug channels. These trenches directed water from nearby rivers or streams into the fields. No pumps, no motors, just gravity. If the land was slightly elevated, then the water wouldn't flow. So they had to redesign entire farms based on the slope of the ground. Water wheels were also used in some areas. Powered by flowing rivers, these wooden wheels lifted water into storage tanks, which could then be released into the crops. This early form of water-powered farming was revolutionary for its time, and it worked. At first, settlers tried to grow European crops, but many failed in Australia's climate, so they began experimenting. Corn, barley, and native plants proved more resilient. Some farmers even learned survival techniques from indigenous Australians who had lived on the land for over 60,000 years. They understood which plants could survive droughts, which soils were best for planting, and how to farm in harmony with nature instead of fighting against it. Over time, farming methods adapted, and slowly, harvests began to improve. Even though tools were simple, they were effective. Wooden plows, iron hoes, hand sickles. Harvesting crops meant bending down for hours, cutting grain by hand, then tying them into bundles, then carrying them to storage. No machines to speed things up, no shortcuts, just human effort. Barns were built using local timber, cut and shaped manually. Fences were made from rough logs. Every structure on an early Australian farm was built by hand, and every harvest was earned through sweat. So the next time you see a modern farm, ask yourself this: If early settlers could grow food in one of the harshest environments on earth with nothing but hand tools, what could we achieve today with the technology we take for granted?